I was at this 30th birthday party last week. One of those milestone events where everyone feels the sudden pressure to have their life entirely figured out. The birthday boy, let's call him Elias, was standing by the drinks, looking every bit the successful professional in a tailored blazer. He had the high-level job, the engagement ring, the mortgage. But as we stepped outside for some air, he let out this heavy, jagged sigh and confessed something that stopped me cold. "I feel like a ghost in a machine," he said, staring at his drink. "I've checked all the boxes, but inside, I still feel like I'm 15 and just pretending to know how to drive. I'm waiting for the adult feeling to kick in, but it just hasn't." He looked genuinely distressed, as if he were failing some invisible, universal test of maturity. To Elias, and to most of us, turning 30 is supposed to be the after picture, the finished product. We've been told since high school that the brain is fully baked by 20, and if you still feel like an impulsive, uncertain mess after that, it's a personal failing or a character flaw. But if you look at the latest neuroimaging data, the picture of Elias's struggle changes from a psychological crisis to a biological certainty. It turns out the adult version of Elias literally didn't exist yet. That prefrontal cortex, the seat of complex planning and social judgment, wasn't a finished structure. It was still a construction site, undergoing a massive, deliberate reorganization that doesn't actually wrap up until age 32. We've been viewing the decade between 20 and 30 as a time to live your life, but evolution treats it as a high-stakes diagnostic period, an extended adolescence where the brain remains a dynamic, reconfigurable system, frantically sampling the environment to decide on its final settings. Elias wasn't a late bloomer or a fraud. He was a biological work in progress, caught in a violent evolutionary mismatch where a brain shaped for the Pleistocene is struggling to finish its final hardware upgrade in a world that demands a finished product a decade too early.
Wow. That story about Elias, that's going to hit home for so many people. It perfectly captures this feeling of being out of sync with your own life.
Exactly. It feels like a personal failure, but it's not.
It's not at all. And what's so powerful here is that the science now gives us a completely new framework for this. It's not psychology, it's neurology.
Yeah.
The old idea that, you're fully cooked by 20, that's been completely dismantled.
Right. We need to give people a kind of scientific permission slip to not have it all figured out. So our mission today, in this deep dive, is really threefold. First, let's lay out the hard evidence for this new timeline, this 32-year brain epoch.
Mm-hmm.
Second, we need to get into the why, the evolutionary logic behind this massive delay, this idea of Neoteny.
And then the third piece is the big one. How does this slow-cooking biological program crash into the modern world? This is that evolutionary mismatch that's causing all the distress for people like Elias.
It really reframes the whole conversation.
It absolutely does. It moves the question from, what's wrong with me, to a much better question. What is my brain actually trying to do right now?
I love that. So let's start there. Let's unpack the evidence. What did this landmark neuroimaging research actually find that just blew up the old timeline?
Okay, so this was a huge undertaking. The breakthrough came from using a special kind of MRI called Diffusion Tensor Imaging, or DTI. It doesn't just take a picture of the brain, it actually maps the communication pathways, the wiring.
So not what the brain can do, but how it's actually built to do it.
Exactly. And they didn't just scan a few dozen college students, they scanned nearly 4,000 people.
4,000?
Yep. From infants all the way up to 90-year-olds. And by tracking how the brain's architecture changes over that whole lifespan, they realized development isn't, it's not a gentle, smooth curve.
It's not a gradual slope.
Not at all. It's
Yeah.
a series of really distinct eras or epochs, and they're separated by these very sharp, very pivotal turning points where the whole organization of the brain's network shifts.
Okay, so how many turning points are we talking about over an entire life?
Just 4. Which tells you how significant they are. When you hit one, the whole trajectory of your brain development changes.
Wow. Okay, so walk us through this new timeline. What are the epochs?
So the first era is what you'd expect, childhood.
Okay.
That runs from birth up to about age 9. The first big turning point happens right around then.
Age 9, okay.
That kicks off the second era, which is adolescence. And this is the shocker. This phase, the longest developmental phase, runs from age 9 all the way to, on average, age 32.
Wait, hold on. All the way to 32?
32. That's the average age the data points to as the end of this massive adolescent-like structural reorganization.
That one fact just changes everything. So what happens after 32?
That's when you enter the third era, which is stable adulthood. And it really is stable. It's the longest single period of stability in the whole lifespan, lasting over 3 decades until about age 66.
And then after that, I'm guessing it's the decline.
Right. You get the final 2 turning points, which lead into early aging around 66 and then late aging after 83. And those are characterized by, a gradual decline in the network's connectivity.
Okay, let's drill down into that first phase a little more. Childhood up to age 9. You said it's all about network consolidation. What's actually happening in a kid's brain then?
It's this incredible 2-part process. First, there's a massive overproduction of connections, of synapses. A toddler's brain is just, it's a chaotic mess of wiring. Far too many connections.
Like a construction site with materials just thrown everywhere.
Perfect analogy. Then the consolidation process begins. The brain starts this ruthless pruning process. The connections that are used frequently get stronger, they get insulated with white matter to make them faster, and the ones that aren't used, they're eliminated.
So it's getting more efficient by actually getting rid of stuff.
Yes, but here's the counterintuitive part. During that whole chaotic phase, the brain's overall wiring efficiency actually goes down.
How does that work?
Because the system is just so busy, it's figuring out its basic floor plan and throwing out all the junk. It's not optimized for speed yet. It's optimized for getting the fundamental architecture right.
Got it. And that sets the stage for the next much longer phase, the 9 to 32 adolescence.
Right. That's the main event, this 23-year-long epoch. It's defined by one thing above all else: the relentless growth and maturation of white matter.
The brain's fiber optic cables.
Exactly. All those connections are being refined, insulated, and reinforced. And the researchers found that this is the only period in your entire life where the overall efficiency of long-range connections across the whole brain is just constantly, steadily increasing.
So if childhood is about building the foundation and pruning, adolescence is about paving the superhighways.
That's a great way to put it, but it's really important to be clear here. We're talking about structural trends. We're not saying a 28-year-old is, psychologically the same as a 12-year-old.
Right.
But what we are saying is that their brain is still undergoing this massive, large-scale structural change. It's still refining its core wiring plan, and that process doesn't stop until 32.
And that number, 32, it isn't just a random average. This study called it the strongest topological turning point. What makes it so definitive?
In simple terms, it's the biggest statistical cliff in the data across the whole lifespan. It's the moment where the brain's organizational trajectory changes most dramatically. The system basically flips a switch from active configuration mode to stable operation mode.
And once it flips that switch, it stays in that stable mode for over 30 years.
For 34 years, yeah, without another major architectural shift.
That kind of structural lockdown must have huge consequences for, your personality and how you think.
Oh, absolutely. And other research backs this up completely. This structural plateau after 32 lines up almost perfectly with when we see personality traits really stabilize. People tend to become less neurotic, more conscientious.
And it also lines up with what they call crystallized intelligence, right?
Yes. Exactly. The knowledge and skills you accumulate over time, that tends to plateau as well because the brain is shifting from learning new things to expertly using what it already knows.
Okay, let's pause on that because it's a really important distinction. The difference between the elastic brain before 32 and the stable brain after. If the younger brain is constantly increasing in efficiency, doesn't that make it, smarter?
It's a great question, and it's about defining smarter. The adolescent brain, that 9 to 32 brain, is what we'd call efficiently elastic.
Elastic, meaning flexible.
Super flexible. It can form new connections and reroute information incredibly easily. It's optimized for novelty, for learning, for exploration.
But a fast computer with no software isn't that useful.
That's the perfect analogy. The older, stable adult brain, post-32, might be less elastic. It takes a bit more effort to forge a brand new pathway. But it's running on decades of highly refined integrated data. It has the software.
So it's wisdom.
It's wisdom. It's crystallized intelligence. The signal might take a fraction of a second longer to travel, but the brain's interpretation of that signal is just so much richer because of all that prior experience. The mature brain prioritizes reliable outcomes. It prioritizes exploitation over exploration.
So that stabilization at 32 is basically the brain saying, okay, data collection phase is over. Time to commit to an optimized but less flexible design.
That's it in a nutshell.
This delay, though, waiting until 32 to finish your core wiring has to be one of the most resource-intensive things nature has ever designed.
It is an absolutely astronomical evolutionary cost, and that brings us right to the heart of the why. It brings us to the concept of neoteny.
Neoteny. It literally means extending youth.
It does. And it's not some weird side effect of being human. It's the absolute centerpiece of our species' entire survival strategy. Well, if you look at what's called life history theory, which compares how different species budget their time, humans are just off the charts. We have an extreme, slow life history. We delay everything. Physical maturity, reproduction, and especially neurological completion.
We've spent decades being dependent.
Decades. It's an incredibly expensive investment because for all that time, you need constant support from your parents, from your tribe, while this huge, energy-hungry brain is still under construction.
Okay, so if the cost is that high, the payoff has to be massive. Why did evolution make this bet?
The payoff is the thing that makes us human. Our ability to navigate incredibly complex social worlds. This is the core of the social brain hypothesis.
Meaning our big brains didn't evolve to make better tools, but to handle other people.
Primarily, yes. In our ancestral environment, the so-called EEA, what determined your success wasn't being the strongest or the fastest, it was being the best social operator.
What made the social world so tricky back then?
Well, think about it. You're living in a group of maybe 150 people, and you have to track everything. Shifting alliances, who's mad at whom, who owes someone a favor from 3 years ago, who is a reliable partner, and who's a cheater.
It's a constant, high-stakes game of social calculus.
It's infinitely more complex than learning how to hunt. The rules of the social world are unwritten, they change constantly, and they're different in every single tribe. So this 20-plus year delay, this neotenic period, was a necessary apprenticeship.
The brain had to stay flexible, it had to stay plastic until it learned the very specific social rules of its group.
Exactly. If your brain locked in its settings too early, you'd be optimized for the wrong social environment. That would be a fatal mistake.
Let's bring this back to Elias, the 30-year-old from the party feeling like a fraud in his corporate job.
His situation is a perfect modern-day example. That anxiety he was feeling about the subtle, brutal politics of his office, that wasn't a psychological flaw. That was a high-fidelity biological sensor working perfectly.
He's navigating a modern tribe.
A very high-stakes one. And his brain, still in that neotenic final configuration phase, was correctly keeping all of its learning windows wide open to frantically download the rules of this new, volatile social algorithm.
So that feeling of overthinking his boss's email or worrying he said the wrong thing in a meeting, that was his brain trying to make sure it didn't miss a crucial piece of data before finalizing his social strategy.
It was a sign of a superbly designed system. He was trading that feeling of short-term comfort for the long-term advantage of mastering a very complex environment. That's the neotenic advantage in action.
The sources also mention playfulness as another key neotenic trait.
Yes, and that's such a beautiful point. We think of play as something for kids, but its function is crucial throughout this entire extended adolescence. Evolution hardwired us for it because it's like a full system workout for the neocortex.
It's practice.
It's practice for the real world. It's how we run social simulations and learn the rules of that complex calculus without, life or death consequences.
So the chaos, the uncertainty, the playfulness, it's all part of this long, deliberate biological strategy, which brings us to that decade that causes so much anxiety for people from your early 20s to your early 30s, that reorganization abyss.
Right. And we need to reframe that abyss. It feels like a pit of uncertainty, but from a biological standpoint, it's the grand finale of our adaptive plasticity. You're not broken. Your brain is custom tailoring itself to reality.
So what is the actual, the computational job the brain is doing during those years?
It's running a very sophisticated, very long-term diagnostic. The best analogy comes from statistics and machine learning. It's doing strategic Bayesian sampling.
Okay, Bayesian sampling. Break that down for me. What does that actually mean for someone living through it?
Yeah, let's not get too technical. Imagine your brain is a scientist, and it's been running a huge A/B test on the world since you were a kid. It starts with a basic belief, a prior, the world is a safe and predictable place. Every single experience you have, every job you take, every relationship that works or fails is a new piece of data. And that data updates your brain's core belief. The brain needs to run enough of these trials to be confident in its conclusions.
So the brain is trying to answer these huge fundamental questions like, is the world I live in stable or is it completely chaotic?
Precisely. It's calculating. Does success in this environment come from innovating and exploring new things, or from sticking to tradition and exploiting what's known? Are rewards based on prestige, where people respect your skills, or on dominance, where you have to be aggressive? The whole point of the 32-year delay is to let the brain gather enough data to answer those questions before it locks in a final strategy.
We talked about this guy, Marcus, who felt like he just drifted through his 20s, new city, new job, new relationship every couple of years. He felt like he was failing.
But from this perspective, Marcus's brain was operating perfectly. He was gathering the most valuable thing possible, a wide, diverse data set. His brain correctly identified the modern world as volatile and refused to commit to a strategy until it had a robust, statistically significant sample of how that world works.
His chaos was necessary data collection.
It was essential data collection, and it's a smart move in a world that's so much less predictable than the one we evolved in.
This data gathering process, it seems to go hand in hand with risk-taking, which is, the classic hallmark of your 20s.
Sure.
Why is taking more risks a feature of this strategy, not just a bug of having poor impulse control?
This is where error management theory, or EMT, comes in. It's a really powerful idea. EMT argues that evolution doesn't care about making you accurate all the time. It cares about helping you avoid the most expensive error.
The most costly mistake.
Right. And for a young adult in our ancestral past, before you had resources or a mate,
Yeah.
what was the most costly mistake?
Missing out on an opportunity.
Exactly. The cost of missing a chance to gain status or find a high-quality partner was often catastrophic for your genetic future. That cost was almost always higher than the cost of trying and failing, which was usually just, some embarrassment or a minor setback.
So the brain evolved a built-in bias towards action, towards risk.
A very strong calibrated bias towards risk-taking and maybe even a little overconfidence. It's designed to push you out of the nest and into the competitive world to go acquire that social capital and mate value.
And this connects back to the brain structure itself, right? The reward centers developing faster than the control centers.
That's the biological mechanism behind it. You've got this high-octane motivation engine, the limbic reward system, that's fully online by your early teens. But the prefrontal cortex, the part that does the cold, hard, 10-year plan risk assessment, that's still a construction site until you're 32.
So you have the gas pedal floored, but the sophisticated braking system is still being installed.
That's the imbalance that drives the whole exploration phase. And then once the brain hits that turning point around 32, the whole strategy shifts. The architecture changes from a system built for aggressive acquisition and novelty seeking to one designed for stable maintenance of what you've already built.
You go from acquire mode to maintain mode.
Precisely. The whole trade-off shifts.
And that trade-off between acquiring and maintaining brings us to the actual neural circuits that are in a constant tug of war here. The exploration-exploitation trade-off.
This is one of the most fundamental problems any intelligent system has to solve. Every single day, your brain has to decide, do I explore a new restaurant with an unknown but possibly amazing payoff, or do I exploit the place I already know and love with a predictable, guaranteed good meal?
And researchers have found that this isn't just a metaphor. There are literally two different competing networks in the brain for these two choices.
That's the amazing part. They are largely separate, non-overlapping neural circuits. And they can see this using fMRI when people do tasks like, the multi-armed bandit problem in a lab.
Okay, so let's start with the exploration network. What are the key parts of the brain that are pushing us to try the new thing?
The exploration network is all about focusing on the outside world. It involves a few major systems like the frontoparietal control network and the salience network. These are the parts of your brain that manage attention and track uncertainty.
So who's the CEO of exploration? Which part is in charge?
That would have to be the frontopolar cortex, or FPC. It's right at the very front of your brain, and it has this really cool, unique job. It calculates the potential exploration bonus.
The exploration bonus.
Yeah, it's essentially the part of you that whispers, yeah, the safe option is good, but what if this other thing is 10 times better? It quantifies the potential upside of taking a risk.
So when you're debating a safe career versus a risky startup, the FPC is what's lighting up, calculating the potential for that huge payoff.
Exactly. And it works with another region called the dorsal anterior cingulate cortex, the DACC. The DACC's job is to track the value of the things you didn't choose.
So it's the neurological source of FOMO, fear of missing out.
You could absolutely call it that. It's constantly tracking the opportunity cost. It keeps nagging the system saying, hey, that option you keep ignoring might actually be better now.
So the FPC calculates the potential reward of switching, and the DACC tells you what you're missing by not switching. What pulls the trigger?
That's the salience network, anchored by a region called the anterior insula. It acts like a circuit breaker. If the exploration bonus is high enough and the value of the unchosen option is nagging you, the salience network flips the switch. It yanks your attention away from your internal stable plan and directs it to the new, novel thing in the outside world.
Wow. Okay, so that's a very sophisticated system for pushing us towards novelty. What about the other side? The exploitation network that keeps us stable.
The exploitation network is the mirror image. It's all about internally directed processes, relying on your memory, your past rewards, your existing knowledge, and this is mainly run by the default network.
The default network, that's what's active when our mind is wandering, right? Thinking about ourselves.
It's our internal simulator. And the core hubs for exploitation are the ventromedial prefrontal cortex, VMPFC, and the orbitofrontal cortex, OFC. These are your brain's valuation system.
They decide what's worth doing again.
They are the ultimate arbiters of habit, yes. They track how rewarding a choice was in the past and predict how rewarding it will be in the future. If a choice gives you a predictable, positive outcome, the VMPFC lights up and basically says, do that again. No need to waste energy exploring.
And this isn't just about, like, choosing the same lunch every day. It's about sticking with a career or a relationship or even an ideology.
Absolutely. And that's where the memory parts of the default network come in, especially the hippocampus. Exploitation isn't just blind repetition. It's repetition that's informed by a successful history.
So the hippocampus is like the librarian, feeding the VMPFC all the historical data that proves this choice has been a good bet in the past.
That's a perfect way to think about it. And as the brain structure finalizes around 32, the wiring becomes more efficient, but less flexible. This biases the entire system towards relying more on these well-established, super efficient exploitation circuits.
Which explains the shift we see across the lifespan. The young brain is biased to explore, the older brain is biased to exploit.
It's a natural structural gradient.
This entire beautifully designed system, the explorer in your 20s, the exploiter in your 30s, it was all built for a very specific type of world. And that brings us right back to the central problem, the evolutionary mismatch.
This is it. This is the core reason why so many people feel that turmoil Elias described.
Right.
We are running this ancient 32-year-long developmental program inside a completely alien post-industrial environment that our genes have had no time to adapt to.
And what's the single biggest driver of that mismatch during that critical 20 to 32 wiring phase?
Without a doubt, it's information density and choice paralysis. The brain's environmental sampling module, that Bayesian system, was designed to get clear, consistent signals.
In the ancestral world, your options were limited.
Very limited. You had a handful of potential career paths, a limited pool of mates. The feedback from your tribe was direct, it was consistent, and it was low density. You knew where you stood.
Now the modern world just throws a fire hose of options at you.
It's infinite, a constant high-density stream of noise. And this causes choice paralysis because the brain can never finish its sampling process. It can never reach a confident conclusion about which path is best because 1,000 new paths appear tomorrow.
Like Sarah, the freelance creator we discussed, who said she felt like she was drowning in a sea of infinite versions of myself.
Sarah's brain is in computational overload. Her ancient environmental stability detectors are getting a constant signal of high variability. She could be a YouTuber, a consultant, a podcaster, a course creator, all viable, all requiring totally different skills and commitments.
So her brain can't settle on a final wiring plan because the environment keeps changing the rules of the game.
It can't. The system can't efficiently switch from exploration to exploitation because there's no clear signal from the tribe, the global economy, about what a stable, successful life strategy even looks like anymore. The fear of missing the next big opportunity keeps that exploration network on high alert long after it should be quieting down.
And then, on top of all that, we pour gasoline on the fire with the digital world, which acts as a powerful supernormal stimulus.
Supernormal stimuli are basically exaggerated, artificial cues that hijack our ancient reward systems. Think about social approval. Ancestrally, getting a nod of approval from your tribe was a rare, incredibly valuable signal. It meant safety. It meant resources.
Now you can get 1,000 likes in an hour from strangers.
Exactly. It's a signal that is thousands of times more intense, frequent, and unpredictable than anything our brains evolved to handle, and this directly hijacks our dopamine loops.
Dopamine, which we just established, is the fuel for the exploration network.
It's the neurochemical of seeking and wanting and novelty. Digital platforms, with their infinite scroll and their variable reward schedules, they are perfectly designed to keep that dopamine system firing on all cylinders. It's like a slot machine in your pocket.
So the very system that's supposed to drive necessary risk-taking in our 20s is now being constantly overstimulated and misdirected by these digital feedback loops.
It's rewiring the brain in real time. It reinforces the circuits for novelty seeking and immediate gratification. And it actively works against the development of the circuits needed for deep focus and long-term, goal-directed exploitation.
That's the biological cost of the mismatch. The most critical developmental decade of our lives, when we were supposed to be finalizing our life's strategy, is being spent in an environment that structurally rewards constant frantic exploration.
And that's why the turmoil you feel in your 20s and early 30s is not a personal failing. It isn't a sign of immaturity. It is the direct, painful, visible result of a deliberate and ancient evolutionary strategy colliding with a bizarre modern world.
The brain is trying to run its 32-year hardware upgrade in an environment that's just too fast and too loud. So the big reframe here for you, the listener, is that the chaos isn't a bug. The chaos is the feature.
That's the ultimate takeaway. We are not running new software on old hardware. We are in the middle of a prolonged, sometimes turbulent, hardware upgrade that is designed to take 32 years to get it right.
Elias, Marcus, Sarah. They aren't malfunctioning. Their turbulence is the sound of a very complex machine doing its job under very difficult conditions.
The goal of that long developmental timeline was never speed. It was maximize flexibility. It was adaptability. Human maturity is not a sprint. It is a slow-cooked brilliance.